Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, on behalf of the family, I'd like to thank you all for gathering at Hillside Memorial Park today for the funeral services of Billy Sammeth. As the services are about to begin, if we could all take this opportunity to place our cell phones and other communication devices and have them placed in either an off or a silenced mode. Officiating Billy's service is Rabbi David Barron and Cantor Elisa Pierce.
Billy, as all of us know, was so much fun, the life of every party, and to be here speaking about losing him is such a contradiction, just seeing a casket and not his vitality. But what we want to take with us today is not this moment of loss, but really also a celebration of the joy of being with him and celebrating his life. In Jewish tradition, we chant and recite one of our beloved psalms, the 23rd Psalm. According to tradition, it was a psalm written by King David when he was a young man before he became a king, and he fled from Saul, who wanted to kill him, and he hid in a cave in the wilderness, and there he confronted one of our greatest fears, the fear of death. And he found in those moments something even more powerful than the fear of dying, which was a strong and abiding faith that saw him through those moments. I'll call on the cantor to chant the opening of the 23rd.
Gam ki elech beget Sammeth lo idara. Gam ki elech beget Sammeth lo idara. Idara ki ata imadi. Idara ki ata imadi. Though I walk through the valley, I shall not fear. Though I walk through the valley, I know you are near.
Please join me in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. Repeating with me, please. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Well, there's really no one better to remember Billy than his sister, Barbara. Barbara, you were so amazing, not just in the last year, that difficult year, carrying hand and foot, moment to moment, for every one of Billy's needs, but really throughout your lifetime together as children and on into adulthood. And so I'd like to call on Barbara now to remember Bill.
Rabbi David. Hi, everybody. Not so good with the steps. And I have a newfound thing. When I get nervous now, I stutter, so I'm going to hope that I don't do that. I first want to say that I really didn't have a God until about 9 years ago. I didn't have any kind of higher power or spiritual life to help me get through anything at all. And I found that 9 years ago. And Billy was the one who kind of encouraged me to get there. Hi, Rosie. So I find now that everything that has happened with us has been perfect. I would get up every morning and I'd pray, God, please hold your arms around us. Hold your arms around Billy. Guide me. Show me where I'm supposed to be. I'll do all the work, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. And that sustained us, not just this year, but for the last couple of years. They were really, really hard. But I have a great big higher power, even so much that what I'm wearing today is because we were going to New York for a wedding. I never travel with dressy clothes, nor do I travel with a suit for Billy. That is not something that would be packed in his wardrobe. There would be Hawaiian shirts, and there would be shorts, and it wouldn't be a suit. So we never made it to the wedding. But God had us in New York, and there was a reason for that. Billy was born in New York, as my sister said, and he passed in New York, and all our family was there, and they all got to come up and say goodbye. And they got to be at his bedside. So there are no mistakes, really. So today, every day I get a meditation and a prayer for the day. And like I said, it's always perfect. And today's, I would do well not to think of the Red Sea of difficulties that lies ahead. I am sure that when I come to that Red Sea, the waters will part and I will be given all the power I need to face and overcome many difficulties and meet what is in store for me with courage. I believe that I will pass through that Red Sea to the Promised Land, the land of the Spirit where many souls meet in perfect comradeship. I believe that when that time comes, I will be freed of all the dross of material things and find peace. And the prayer for today. I pray that I may face the future with courage. I pray that I may be given strength to face both life and death fearlessly. I do a lot of meditation and I pray with a lot of meditation music, and that's really what sustained both of us during some of the really tough days, and especially the days in the hospital. I'm not a big talker anymore. I know that would be shocking to many of you. I like to stay quiet. And I like to stay in prayer. And I like to have Billy do the same. So when he was doing all the chemo, I would bring earphones and I would put on all this meditation music, and he would sit there and kind of doze off to it. But many of the stories, some of you were at my father's funeral and you heard a lot of the funny stories. Billy was just the funniest person I knew. He could make me laugh. Oh my God, he was so funny. And he told a lot of the funny stories at Daddy's funeral, and maybe some of you were there and heard them. But I was very, very serious. And then when he got up, of course, it became like a comedy store. And Cher was there, and she came up to him after, and she said, "I have never been to a funeral like this." He's just so funny. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit. Many of you have your own stories. All of you have your own stories. I mean, how could you not have your own stories with Billy? And if you've been on Facebook, you see, I mean, oh my gosh, thousands and thousands of comments. So, just a little bit, when my mom went off to the hospital and I directed her, I wanted him to be named Michael Scott because I had a boyfriend in, third grade named Michael. And she didn't bring him home right away. He was left in the hospital because he had thrush. And she came home and I said, "Well, where is he?" And she said, "Well, he's in the hospital." And I said, "You left him in the hospital?" She said, "He's coming home, he's coming home." Anyway, they did bring him home, and they told me that his name was William Henry Sammeth. And I said, "That is not what I told you to name him." So I was already pissed off at them. And I remember we had a crib in the living room. Really? Ellen and I were in the dining room. And it was very strange. We had a bedroom with beautiful mahogany ceilings. And Billy was in the living room, and he was in a crib in there. And I kind of remember, just saying, "You know what, you two," to my parents, "you go do whatever it is you do, because I don't think you do a really good job, and I'm just going to take care of this." And I did. And every morning I would go into that little living room, and the crib was white, and I'd kind of put my head through the little bars to look at him. I just wanted to look at him. He was just so cute. He was big and fat, and he had this beautiful blonde hair and these great big blue eyes. And my father kept saying, "You better not put your head in that because you're going to get stuck." So one of my family had bought a big doll carriage for me and a great big walking doll. Remember those great big walking dolls? And Billy had his own carriage, but I didn't think it was good enough for him. So I would dress him in my doll's clothes and put him in my doll carriage and take him down the street in Brooklyn, up and down the street. People said, "Doesn't he have a real carriage?" I said, "This is his real carriage." So Billy and I would walk to school in the morning, PS 152, and we always would hold hands. And he was in kindergarten and on the first floor, and the teacher was my very, very favorite teacher, Mrs. Phelan. And I was on the top floor in 6th grade, and one day they came up and got me, and they said, "Barbara, you have got to go down there and get your brother. He's throwing tantrums. You've got to go down there and take him home." So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of getting him out of there. What? No, it was not Ellen. Anyway. So I did. I took him home. He was throwing tantrums. I don't know what happened, but I walked him home, and every day after school, I would, whatever class I was in, it would be cooking class, and I'd come home and I'd wait for him to come home. And then when he got home, I would take him into the kitchen and we'd do cooking. There was Romper Room, I think, was on, and I got all our dishes and pans and pots and pans, and I went up to Ellen's room on the top floor. You weren't home. We did it in spite of you. And we were just banging on everything. I mean, he was my buddy. He was my best pal. I took him everywhere with me. You know, he was like my yellow blanket. He was my security. I didn't play with dolls. I took Billy. And my friends loved him. They all loved him. And they would say to me, "Is Billy coming with us?" I said, "Of course Billy's coming with us." I took him everywhere. I took him to the movies. When I had birthday parties at the house, I have photos of it. It was all my girlfriends and me and Billy in the front blowing out my birthday candles. Every Sunday, my dad would take us to Coney Island. Many of you have heard the stories about what Billy did at Coney Island. My dad trying to prove him that gambling didn't pay, and of course, he won everything. And we'd play cops and robbers, and he was just so cute. Many of you know he had the very first Davy Crockett hat. My dad was director of worldwide merchandising at Disney, and the Davy Crockett hat, he was going to license the guy, and Billy got the first one, and oh my God, he lived in it. That and his cowboy outfit. One summer, my mother was very, very active. She loved riding horses and golf and tennis and all that, and my dad took us to a place called Peekskill Dude Ranch, and after a couple of weeks, I had it. I was like, okay, this is fun, but Billy and Mommy wanted to stay, and they just wanted to go horseback riding every single day. And I remember going back to Brooklyn, and the phone rang, and my mother said, "Something happened to Billy." I said, "What? What happened to Billy?" And she said, "Well, he was walking these 2 Weimaraner dogs, and he was holding the leash, and one of them took off, and he fell, and he broke his front tooth." I went nuts. "You bring him home right now. I told you that you couldn't take care of him. You bring him home right now." It was terrible. I was crying. I was hysterical. And then, as to that, the day I got married, or the week before I got married, Billy had a horse, and he named it Guapo. And the week before I got married, he went riding out on this horse, and the horse threw him. And he smashed his head on the ground, his whole face. And he came home, and his entire face was bloody, and I was so angry. I said, "You go into your room, and you do not come out until that wedding. I don't want to see your face. I will bring you food." And he was like all scabbed. You know, some of our, this was another thing. My mother couldn't get him to go shopping for clothes. Can you imagine? And she said, "Barbara, he won't go shopping for clothes. You're going to have to take him." So I did. I took him, and I created a crazy shopaholic. I mean, anybody that knows Billy knows he didn't just buy one of anything. He bought 10. And if it was on sale, you know, Teen can tell you. Where are you? Teen can tell you. Yeah. Shopping. And I'll just tell you, we traveled a lot. And it was always exciting, and it was always fun, and there was always some kind of adventure. But there was always something underneath that he was kind of planning and doing that wasn't really by the books, and I wasn't supposed to know about it. So this one time, I think we were going to the south of France. And I was really down at that time, and he said, "Doll, Las Vegas guys or whatever invited me to the south of France. Do you want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to go." And he said, "Okay, pack your bags, and I'm going to do all the arrangements, and you just show up." And so I did, and I guess we got a limo or something to the airport. So I get to the airport, and we got there, and he said, "Look, I've done something here, so don't talk to anybody on the plane." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Just do me a favor, doll. Just don't talk to anybody. Don't engage them all in conversation and tell them where you're going and what you're going to do. And, you know, just so we were in first class, and he had the window seat, and he had his shades on. And he was going to nicely fall asleep. And I go up to the cockpit because I want my little, at that time, glass of champagne with the orange juice. And I go up to the front, and I said, do you have some champagne and orange juice? Oh, yes. And where are you going today? I said, I don't know. And they said, what do you mean you don't know? And I said, my brother's taking me on a birthday trip, and he's surprising me. And they said, you don't know where you're going? I said, no. And they said, well, how did you pack? I said, well, I just kind of took one of everything. I said, my brother's very eccentric. He does things like that. So I take my wine, and I go back to the seat. And Billy is sitting there, and he's kind of, with his head and his little thing, and he's all comfortable, and he's got his blinders on. And I look up, and all the stewardess and stewards are standing at our seat. And I looked up, and Billy, I said, Billy, he goes like this, and he looks up at them. They said, we just had to meet you. We've never heard of anybody getting on a flight not knowing where they're going. You are the most wonderful brother. And he went, uh-huh. And they left, and he looked at me, he says, I told you not to talk to anybody. Anyway, the travel goes on and on. And when some of you will say, how are you doing? How are you doing? And I can say today I'm doing okay. But I have been strong. People say stay strong. I have been staying strong for a really long time because I never wanted him to see that I wasn't. And sometimes there comes a time when you just have to let go. I'm a very strong person, and I adore my brother. Anybody that knows us, Barbara and Billy, Billy and Barbara. And I never let him see me cry. And I just said, Doll, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. He'd say, I know, Doll. It's tough, but I'm going to get through it. So he's getting through it, and he's getting through it his way. And I know you're all there. I know you're all there with us.
Barbara had a song that she really loved that epitomized in some ways the relationship that you just heard a little glimpse of between her and her brother Billy.
Nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around. Nothing's gonna harm you, no sir, not while I'm around. Demons are prowling everywhere nowadays. I'll send them howling, I don't care, I've got ways. No one's gonna hurt you, no one's gonna dare. Others can desert you, not to worry, whistle, I'll be there. Demons will charm you with a smile for a while, but in time, nothing can harm you, not while I'm around. Being close and being clever ain't like being true. I don't need to, I would never hide a thing from you like some. No one's gonna hurt you, no one's gonna dare. others can desert you, not to worry. Whistle, I'll be there. Demons will charm you with a smile for a while, but in time, nothing can harm you. Not while I'm around.
Next, I'd like to call on Sister Ellen to come up and share some memories of Billy.
Before I start, I just want to mention, some of you may have seen the back of my shirt. When Billy turned 50, he had a party in New York at a bowling alley. Unfortunately, I could not go because I had spinal surgery and I was incapacitated. But Billy gave me his shirt. So now I'm wearing it to his funeral. I'm wearing it. Those who don't know me, I am Ellen, Billy's new older sister. I was from New York, but without a mister, I moved to New Jersey when I got the means. But I never went to or came from New Mexico or New Orleans. Billy was 14 years younger than me. I treated him like my little baby. In fact, one day at the beach, Barbara walked away, but not Billy. He wouldn't have dared, and he couldn't stray. Barbara remembers that. My brother Billy was so cute. I loved my brother Billy. Billy loved to play with Andrew and John. Oh, I'm sorry. William loved to play with Andrew and run from John. Excuse me. He stayed in touch as years went on. Billy also loved to come upstairs to my room when I read, because he remembered I had candy and cookies under my bed. My Billy was unforgettable. I loved my brother Billy. Billy went with me, if time allowed, if he wasn't going with Barbara, to college fairs and parties. I was so proud. If I was old, then he would have come along when I played canasta or mahjong. My brother Billy loved to go places and try new things. For those people who don't know, mahjong is a game, of tiles and for old people. I loved my brother Billy. At my wedding, he walked down the aisle with the rings. He didn't foresee the anger and sadness it would bring. I moved away and I left him. But later he moved to LA and found peace. And I gave him David, my son, his nephew, and Lynn, my daughter, his niece. My brother Billy was loving. I loved my brother Billy. Billy had a special connection to Greece. Grease, not Greece. He was probably the only one in our wonderful country who knew both Carol Demas, Greece's Broadway star, and Olivia Newton-John, Greece's movie star. Carol Demas lived next door to us, and turned out she became a big star, and supposedly is, and Johnny lived down the block, and he became Johnny. I'm kidding, I don't know what you did. I really don't know. I mean, I do, but I don't want to say it. My brother was special. I loved my brother Billy. To end this tribute to my dear brother, who was unlike any other, I wish for him to rest in peace. From Ellen's, your sister, David, your nephew, and Lynn, your niece. Billy was wonderful. I loved my brother, and I will always love him. Thank you.
It's Howard. I'd like to call next on Howard.
Hello everyone, my name is Howard and I'm one of Billy's close friends, one of his best friends. And I say one because if anybody's had access to the internet since Billy passed on Monday, I've never known anybody have so many best friends. And I'm honoured to call myself one of them. It's very difficult for me to speak like this, and I hope you'll understand. I'm sure that Billy would forgive me if my steely British composure fails me. And I have to sit down. I fought with Barbara over what I was going to say today because Barbara really wants me to share the funny and the lighter moments of the times that I had with Billy. So I'm happy to do that now. I first met the legend that I know as Bumper 27 years ago when a mutual friend of ours brought him to the opening of one of my restaurants in London. Billy sailed in wearing a floor-length white raccoon coat with that famous laugh, those incredible blue eyes, and a greeting that I'll never forget. Hi, doll. It drowned out all the other guests. Bumper's presence dominated the whole evening, as indeed it did at every party, dinner, or event that I ever attended with him in the following 27 years. And I'm sure you've all had similar experiences. We became best friends that night. At the restaurant opening, there was an enormous buffet, and half of it was for the desserts. And it was that night, our very first night, that I learned that Billy had two stomachs. He had one, which was for food, and that was capacious enough. But he had another entirely different stomach for chocolate. Anything to do with chocolate. Boy, did he love that. Chocolate, ice cream, chocolate, cookies, frozen chocolate, bananas, anything and everything. And always, a lot of it ended up down the front of his clothes. And some of it around the mouth and the lips as well. So that night, 27 years ago, was the start of an odyssey of adventure, laughter, travels, and friendship. And it continued unabated until earlier this week. I told you. Bumper was the most talented, kind, generous, and beautiful soul I've ever known. And he was by far the funniest. He was eccentric too. In the true sense of the word, he was a character. He was generous to a fault. He gave money to friends, I know of quite a few, thousands and thousands of dollars, and he never asked for repayment. He never asked for anything in return. But in the way that he was so eccentric, he would never take a taxi. Are you crazy, he'd say, a taxi? Too expensive. Barbara's already told you about the shopping. He would buy the craziest stuff, and so much of it. He would buy cat food if it was on sale, and he didn't have a cat. But for Bumper, it wasn't the bargain, and it wasn't about their money. It was about playing the game. It was about beating the system. It was about beating the odds. I'll never forget, we once took a trip many years ago to Key West. It was a 3-day vacation. And Bumper ruined an entire day of it by dragging me around a 3-hour tour of a vacation rental business. Because anyone that could withstand the 3 hours qualified for a $25 restaurant voucher. I didn't know this. Anyway, we got back to the hotel where we were staying, and I gave the voucher to some other people that we'd met at the hotel because I didn't know how important it was to Bumper. He didn't speak to me the whole of the next day. We all have so many stories of Bumper. I remember my phone in London ringing, and I answered it, and I get, "Hi, doll," down the end of the phone. He said, "I'm at Hertz." "At Hertz? Are you renting a car?" "No," he said, "I was just passing, and the phone on the counter is free." I'm sorry, Hertz. Anyone that knew Bumper would know that in any restaurant, hotel or airline, if it wasn't nailed down, beware. How can I ever forget Bumper struggling down the gangplank of a cruise that we'd been on? I don't know how he didn't dislocate his shoulder, but the suitcase was so heavy that the handle broke. I don't know what was in the suitcase, but it took 2 porters to carry it down to the taxi, which I had paid for. Sorry, Cunard. He once rang me up and he said, "What are you doing tomorrow, Dole?" And I said, "Not much." Why? He said, "I've booked Joan Rivers to perform at a birthday party in the Maldives for a British tycoon. And I've put you on the manifest of the private jet as her bodyguard." So I grabbed my passport and off I went. We laughed for 2 days. It was only a 2-day trip until the tycoon, Sir Philip Green, asked for a private audience with Joan and Billy before they left the island. So as the bodyguard, I had to escort them. But one thing I'd failed to mention to Bumper, because I didn't know it would be relevant, was that I know Sir Philip Green. He went to school with my brother. And we were going directly from the audience with them to the aeroplane, and Billy was uncontrollable, as I had to walk down escorting them so that I wouldn't be seen. And actually that was not the only time I was recruited by Billy to be a bodyguard. I'll never forget, he rang me and said, "Dal, we're going to Paris." Right, great. "You're Cher's bodyguard," he said. And I thought, oh, it'd be another easy assignment. Except when we got to the Champs-Élysées, he was promoting Believe at the time, and Cher was due to do a little performance in a small club on the Champs-Élysées. When we got there, there'd been a leak, and there were 15,000 people outside. And Billy was hysterical, as I actually had to work as the bodyguard and hold the crowd back so that he and Cher could pass through. The stories could go on forever, and they will live with me forever. And I'm sure we all have our own stories and moments that we'll take with us too. There are simply not enough superlatives to cover all the bases with Bumper. He was simply unique, and I know it sounds trite to say it, but when they cast him, they did break the mold. I can't speak about Billy without speaking about Barbara. Barbara, Billy, Barbara. 2 peas in a pod were never as close as you two. And you were devoted to each other, and Barbara's devotion and care for Bumper is like none I've ever seen. And I know that Billy will now be looking after her. We'll all miss the famous words, "Hi, doll." But I'm betting you're going to use them one more time on this, your last vacation. And I'm also betting that your maker will fall for you the same way that we all did. To the last time. Bye, doll.
I'd like to call on Jim Morey next. Jim.
Hello, Billy and I had what we called an enduring friendship. It started somewhere in the 1970s when he was working at MGM Records, and I was in a big management firm, and we were managing the Osmond Brothers. And Billy kept showing up at Osmond events, and we immediately became friends. And I eventually went back to the partners of the company and said, "There's this kid over at MGM that would be a great addition to our company." And they said, "Well, find out exactly what it is that he does over there." It was very difficult to find out because no one at MGM was sure what he did either. But he was definitely busy. He came into the firm, and the first thing I had to do was say, "You can't be Billy for a while. You have to be Bill. I can't put you out with clients called Billy. Eventually they can call you Billy, but please, let's just be Bill. So he became Bill Sammeth for a while, and so our friendship endured as a colleague. Eventually, I became a partner in the company, and he then became an employee. And our friendship endured as an employee. Later on, he decided to leave the company and take 2 very valuable clients with him. Believe it or not, our friendship endured. My partners could not believe that I would talk to him, that I would go to dinner with him. And it was very simple. He was my friend. So an interesting thing about friendship is that when you talk to somebody and then you haven't talked to them for a while and the phone rings, Billy and I could pick up the conversation as if it had been a while. And by the way, sometimes it was a while. He would have a tendency to disappear. And remember that famous voicemail when you called him? It was, Billy, Billy, Billy is busy, busy, busy. And boy, was he busy. So some of you would ask me, have you heard from Billy for a while? And I would say, no, I haven't, but I'm sure he's okay. And then I would get a little nervous myself that maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. He would eventually call me and we would talk about things. Sometimes I just listened and it made him feel better. Some very strange topics at times. There were, with Billy, always sunny days, but trust me, there were cloudy days and there were a couple black days too. So the friendship has endured through all of that. Eventually, as my career changed towards the end, we became partners again. So I now had to speak to him occasionally as a partner, and there was an occasion where I could not get him on the phone. So I sent a text and said, call me now. And I knew he would call. And he called, and I said, gee, the reception's a little strange. Where are you? He said, I'm in Paris. And I thought, oh my God, what client do we have in Paris? What's going on? I said, what are you doing in Paris? He said, I came for a haircut. And the only thing I could think of to say was, rather than chastise him as how that wasn't, fiscally, reasonable, I said, well, who's cutting your hair? And he gave me a whole biography on this person and said, I can work it out if you'd like to come too. However, he knew I would rather not leave Encino for a haircut. So again, the friendship has always endured through those periods. And by the way, he said, don't worry, I'll be back sometime next week. And I said, you staying for a manicure or something? And he said, no, but I've got a $99 ticket back to Miami next Thursday. The interesting thing about Billy is that you're all friends of his. I'm his enduring friend. But there's one, there's one thing that you should be aware of. He isn't finished with you. There's a new angel in heaven that right now is dropping names and jockeying around for position, because when you least expect it, something good is going to happen in your life. Trust me, I know Billy.
And lastly, Larry Wilker. Larry.
By the way, the reason the haircut was in Paris was it was free. Billy. How can you describe the uniqueness that was Billy Sammeth in just a few minutes or even hours? The truth is, it can't be done. Billy had so many wonderful qualities. We could spend hours praising and admiring each one. It's why we loved our Billy. He was a life force. Funny, sweet, kind, compassionate, big heart, smart, stubborn, clever, great friend. fierce but fair and devoted manager, spectacular storyteller, people person, lover of automobiles, and world traveler are just a few of the ways that we could describe and admire Billy. He had so many facets to him. You all know Billy, the famous talent manager, but do you know Billy, the king of Airbnb on Miami Beach? Builder of IKEA furniture. No sublet restrictions were ever an obstacle to growing the empire. You just had to meet him for a minute, and you wanted to be with him all the time. Sorry. I know it was that way for me. I met Billy when I was booking acts in the early 1980s, and I knew instantly this was someone I wanted to be my friend. I made it a point to see him whenever I was in LA or New York, and he would drop in to see me at the Kennedy Center from time to time. 11 years ago, my wife and I moved to Miami Beach next door to Billy. How lucky were we? The bonus was we got to know and love and admire Barbara. Billy worked in this business a long time, but he never lost his kindness, his moral center, or his sheer joy in the work and in living. We now live in a country that has become mean-spirited, intolerant, selfish, and uncaring. Billy was the light in that darkness. We need more Billies.
Well, for me, it's very special because I know Billy and Barbara, God, how many years? 30 years? 35 years? My memories go back to, of course, them being at our Temple of the Arts over the holidays, but being in their home, in their family's home, Phil and Miriam's home, and seeing Billy and Barbara there, and the love of that family, that dynamic, that love was very strong. And as you heard today so beautifully and eloquently, you look up Billy in the dictionary, and under that name will come up the word fun. He was so much fun. He had that witty sense of humor, that sarcastic tinge to it sometimes, but always loving, always loving. I remember one time we were in an event, and there was someone who was with me at the synagogue who didn't know me, didn't know the temple, and Billy had just come up and he said, "Oh, hi, Rabbi Visa." And the man looked at him and said, "I thought your last name was Barron." So, well, you don't understand. When our synagogue took an ad for the Jewish holidays, it said, "Rabbi Barron and Temple of the Arts welcome you to the high holidays. Visa and MasterCard accepted." And the guy who did the layout design put Visa and MasterCard accepted at the top. He said, "If you're going to give Visa top billing from now on, you're Rabbi Visa to me." And that name stuck. Barbara can attest to that. I remember one time when the Minister of Tourism of the State of Israel, and Billy loved Israel and visited Israel with Howard, and said to me, "Well, Rabbi, you know, your Temple of the Arts has a lot of people in the entertainment industry. Do you think you can bring some of them to Israel and experience the beauty of our country?" And I said to Billy, "So Billy, what do you think? What do you think of this?" He said, "Look, I've been to Israel. Beautiful country. The people, there are people. I'm not so sure about it. You know what, Rabbi? Get a letter from the president of Israel that you can carry with you in your pocket everywhere you go, so that if you do take a celebrity to Israel, you make sure you say, 'Here, we've been invited by the president of Israel,' and they don't give you a hard time." Billy was exceptionally warm-hearted. You heard about his generosity to so many people, and it was the highest level of giving in Judaism. In Judaism, they're actually, according to Maimonides, the great rabbi and physician to the Sultan of Egypt from the 13th century, he wrote a ladder of charitable giving. And number 7, the next to the highest is where the person giving the gift is unknown to the person receiving the gift, so that there's total anonymity. But the highest level, the 8th, is giving somebody a chance to create their own career, their own life. And Billy really mentored so many people. He gave them the skill set, the admiration of his style that enabled them to succeed. And as you heard, social media is just exploding with condolences and comments and funny stories about life with Billy. And I think that's what we suggest to one another today. Let's remember him in joy, in happiness, in celebration, and just having a great fun time. That's how I'll think of him. The puckish smile, the twinkle in his eye, the grin, the jab sometimes, but always in good spirit. And that's what I'll take with me, and I hope all of us will take into our hearts. In Jewish tradition, in the Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism, we believe that even though we die physically, our souls are eternal. And in fact, our souls recycle in the universe. Someone can be physically out of our line of sight, but when we feel the love of that person and the friendship of that person, they're right there, very real, very powerful. And Billy was that presence, that unforgettable presence, and his soul will be forever a part of us throughout all time to come. And let us say, Amen. Please rise for a moment of silence to be followed by the memorial prayer. In the rising of the sun and when it sets, we'll remember him. In the change of seasons, the coming of holidays and celebrations, we'll remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share or sorrows we need to unburden, we'll remember him. For as long as we live, he will live, for he is forever a part of us as we remember him.
שוכין במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהרים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת זאב בן פנחס ומרים שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו אנא בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו מעניין Shalom, Hamishkevo, Vinamad, Amen.
Dear God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy who shine for us as the brightness of the firmament, to the soul of our beloved Billy Sammeth, who has gone to his eternal home, Billy, the son of Philip and Miriam. Dear God of mercy, we beseech you, remember the many mitzvot, the worthy and righteous deeds he performed while together with us in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated.
I'd like to thank Rabbi Barron and Cantor Pierce for officiating, as this concludes the sanctuary portion of the service honoring Billy's life. In a few moments, the casket bearers will be called forth, who will be escorting Billy to his final place of rest in the court of Joshua. If you wish to join the family for the closing part of the service today, I'll ask that you please immediately return to your vehicles upon exiting the sanctuary here, so that you may follow behind the funeral coach in a driving procession to the interment site. At the interment site, the brown prayer books will be referenced to for the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. You can find the Mourner's Kaddish on pages 31 and 32 of the brown prayer books. So before we leave the sanctuary, I'll invite you to bring one of those booklets with you. As you return to your vehicles, please hold your condolences for the family until the services do conclude at the interment site. Immediately upon the conclusion of the service, the family has extended an invitation for you to join them at the Mark at 6 p.m., located on Pico Boulevard. 4 p.m. 4 to 8 p.m. Okay. 4 to 8 p.m. Directions are on the marble lectern to the left of the exit of the sanctuary, and further copies are also available at the interment site. The family would also like you to know that they will be holding a Shiva gathering and a Shiva minyan after the gathering. This will also be taking place at the Mark. It is a great honor to be a casket bearer for our loved ones. The following individuals have been selected to act as active casket bearers. As I call forth the names of the following individuals, I'll ask that they do please rise and come to the front of the room on either side of Billy's casket. Howard Malin, Jim Morey, Larry Wilker, Ed Keller, Bill Keller, Mitch Stanton, John Gordon, and Dan Sirota. The next list of people that I'm going to be reading the names of are acting as honorary casket bearers. Honorary casket bearers will be immediately following behind Billy's casket. As I call forth the names of these following people, I'll ask that they please come to the room in the front of the podium here so that they may be ready to follow immediately behind Billy's casket. Sharon Goldberg, David Roth, Madeline Melnick, Liz Wallace, Cece Cooper, Janet and Jay Silverman, Wendy Hudson, and Debbie Brown. Barbara and Ellen will be leading the honorary casket bearers, as well will be all of Billy's cousins and family. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, let us all rise in honor of Billy.
One quick announcement. The families also ask that in lieu of flowers, people who want to make contributions can do so to the Billy Sammeth Fund and the Lustgarten Foundation, and also Let's Win PC, PC standing for pancreatic cancer, Let's Win PC, led by Dr. Allison Ocean. Thank you.